Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Work Comp Talk. We're really excited to have you on board with us once more. If you've yet to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel or anywhere on social media, make sure you do so now. We have great content for you, tips, and so much information to share in regards to the workers' compensation system here in California. As you guys know, joining me is my co-host,
Bilal Kassem.
This is hilarious. We were just rehearsing how we usually start the show, and he was making fun of how, I always say the same thing, but I can't help it. Remember there was that one time where I always used to say, I'm really excited about today, and I could not say
Welcome back to another episode of Work Comp Talk.
Today's episode is one of the hottest trending topics ever in the history of workers' comp. And it's not necessarily settlements, surprisingly. Yeah, you would think settlements is what everybody wants to know about. It's more so with something that's hitting us up around the corner, the summertime, which with summer, we all know vacation time comes around. So it's in regards to that. Taking vacation time while on workers' comp. Should I take my vacation time? How does that work? Personal time off, the number one subject in workers' comp, believe it or not.
Yeah, it comes up a lot. I think vacation time often gets lumped into paid time off nowadays. I think with a lot of employers, they lump together sick time and vacation time, and it really depends employer to employer. A lot of companies are mandated by law, depending on where they are, to provide sick time, and they provide the option of paid vacation. And a lot of companies just like to lump them together and say, we'll for sure meet this minimum, but we're also going to add in some other stuff on top, and it's up to you to use it as you want.
So do you really have to take that time off? Say, for example, that I had a planned vacation for July and we're in April and I'm injured and I really want to utilize that time during my vacation time. Am I obligated to use it because I got injured?
Yeah, so California is an at-will employment state, which means that unless you have a contract stating otherwise, your employment is at will, meaning that you can be terminated at any time for any reason. And so long as the employer is providing you the bare minimum state and federally mandated benefits and rights, they're okay to do that. And so what comes up a lot in workers' comp is where someone maybe isn't receiving benefits, but they can't work. And their employer says, well, if you're not going to work, you need to be on paid vacation or PTO, if that's sick time or otherwise. And if you don't have any of that, too bad, so sad. Technically, employers are legally allowed to terminate you while you're off of work, even if you are collecting workers' compensation benefits, provided, again, that there's a lawful reason for it in the first place. They can't just arbitrarily terminate you and then not terminate someone else in the same position, because that may be a form of discrimination.
Oof. And that's a whole nother subject. Yikes. This sucks. This is not what I was expecting to hear.
It never is for most people. And I think there's a lot of people that have long-term relationships with employers.
Yeah. Or
it's a small, what we call mom and pop shop, where maybe there's, a handful of employees and really everyone's super close and there's really no friction, and then someone gets injured and they find out that, hey, maybe my employer's not so cool. Maybe my employer's just like the other guys, and they treat their people like crap, and they'll look for reasons to terminate you or make you burn through your vacation time or your sick time. And, a lot of employers, I think California in particular, have, they say no unpaid leave, which means that you can burn through your sick time, you can burn through your vacation time, and if you're still not back after that, then they're going to let you go.
Yikes. No, and I see it a lot. There's a lot of cases that we get where people are pretty much at the ends of their ropes with how they're going to get paid. And mind you, this is all even before they've learned that they're going to get some type of monetary benefit within their workers' comp case. So it's like the only way they can make ends meet is by taking my vacation time, all my PTO, all my sick days, trying to get a payment while I'm trying to recover, which kind of sucks for the injured worker. It's like, you didn't tell yourself, let me get injured today. That sucks, because say you do use up all your time and you don't get fired, you're not going anywhere for the rest of the year.
Yeah. And I think the issue, though, is, and this comes up a lot, is people take the vacation time because they're not getting money in the first place, right?
You need
and
it, yeah.
so they need the income. The vacation time that you have is considered an accrued benefit, meaning it's yours.
Right.
You know, if you have vacation that accrues throughout your employment and then you leave your employment, that vacation time needs to be paid out to you, right? And so it's not considered a benefit, meaning that if you are in a workers' compensation case and for whatever reason your case is denied and it's taking a while to fight and you have to burn through some PTO time to cover yourself, the insurance carrier, or if it's a self-insured employer, does not get credit for the vacation time that you used against your temporary disability benefits.
It's funny. It's those hard moments when you realize how good your employer actually is with you. It's when you realize who's actually on your team. Well, shit! I'm mad. This sucks, dude. So, okay, yeah, you take your PTO, you take your vacation time because that's the only form of payment you're going to receive while you're out trying to recuperate. Then what?
Well, if it turns out, for example, that your case was denied and you should have been on temporary disability that whole time, to the extent you should have been paid temporary disability, that would be something the lawyer would get back for you. So even if the period of time that you drew vacation time should have been temporary disability, you still get the temporary disability even though, you know, you were still kind of paid for that time, but it's because it was your money that it was paid in the first place.
It's like you paying yourself to recover. Man, that's like a really scary situation.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you know, sometimes cases can be denied for months, sometimes a year. It can go for a long time, and, you know, there's very rarely anyone who has that much accrued vacation time. And
Correct.
you know, we usually tell people, look, if you need to use the money, you need to use the money. It's better than, you know, being booted out of your home or, you know, not being able to feed your kids or whatever
Which
the case
is the
may
case.
be.
Believe it or not, we've seen a lot of cases where people do get booted out of their home where their landlords just don't understand the concept of you fighting a workers' comp case, and they're just like, you're not paying, so you're out. And we've seen and we've had to help families seek shelter when they're going through this. So it's real and understandably okay, I guess, for someone to take their vacation time and personal time off. And I think this is one of the questions where a lot of people come back and say, well, what if I don't want to take it? You know, am I obligated to take it? Do I have to use it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your situation. It depends entirely who your employer is.
Yeah.
There are some employers that have specific policies about PTO and return to work. You know, school districts are one of them. They have a 39-month rehire list where basically they say if you're not cleared to go back to work, they place you on this list. And then when you can go back to work, then they'll talk about hiring you back. But every employer is different. Again, it depends if there's a contract or if it's at will. And even if your employer doesn't fire you, you know, can they require you to take vacation? They can have a policy that says no PT, no unpaid time off. And if you're out of vacation time, I guess theoretically, if there's a cause for your termination, they could let you go. I think the key in all of this is to determine whether or not there's a lawful administration of whatever policy they have. Meaning, you know, if they're treating Bill differently than they're treating Bob, there's a problem. If they're treating Bill and Bob the same way, and their policy is legal, then there's no issue there. Yeah.
Which is the important part of where an employee handbook comes into place when you get hired in a job. Don't just think it's just the book. Like, oh, okay, no, that's where you read the fine print. And what is it going to be like if you were to find yourself in a pickle where you've gotten injured, and, you know, what are their policies exactly when it comes to all of that? You know, it comes into play too when women get pregnant, like the family, like Medical Leave Act. Obviously, we understand that it's a law in California. However, employees sometimes give you extra time off because of the way they understand family and how it's important to them. And there's others that say absolutely not. And like you said, every employer does their own rules. Unfortunately, it just depends whose hands you end up being in when you get injured.
Yeah, and if you know you're really scared that you're going to lose your job, you can apply for FMLA leave. FMLA leave isn't necessarily a paid benefit per se, but it's a protected job status.
Right.
So if you work 12 months, you get up to 12 weeks of protected status, which means that if you're off of work, your employer is legally obligated to hold your job and offer you the same position back when you're ready within that time frame. So, you know, if you're on FMLA leave, you could leave for, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, come back, and your employer has to bring you back.
Yeah.
of course.
I didn't know they had to keep your position, because I remember at one point I was in a pickle once, and I was told we can continue to give you a job in this company. However, your position may no longer be available to you. It could have been a discussion between my employer, because the position was very specific. I have no idea, but
Yeah, I mean, the way the employer communicates it isn't, usually that spectacular. And oftentimes the HR department gives you a different answer than your employer does,
Yeah.
if they even have an HR department. I think the main point is that, if you're going to take FMLA leave, one, it's short-lived. Most people are off of work for longer than 12 weeks.
heck yeah.
And two, even if you do take FMLA leave, it's not going to actually provide you any monetary benefit per se. So you need to find some way to supplement your income. That being said, that's why a lot of people take vacation time.
And that's a way to kind of make up for it. But even then, it's only so much that you can get from it. And it's only going to help you out for a month? For that 1 month? And then what are you going to do for the following month? It's a very tricky situation to be in, but know that the answer to the number one question is, do I have to take my vacation time or PTO? It unfortunately depends on who you work for.
Yep. It depends on whether or not you have a contract, whether you work for a public agency or a private agency, what their policy is on unpaid leave. There's a variety of things. And ultimately, at the end of the day, can they force you to take it? Probably not, but that doesn't mean that they are going to keep you on the payroll then. So it just depends on the scenario. And I think, another scenario that comes up a lot with vacation too is just whether or not you should take vacation in the first place. Like, if you're injured at work, should you go to Disneyland with your family for fun while you're, waiting for your case to be resolved?
No.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. It depends, right? They will hire private investigators to maybe follow you around and do all that stuff.
But I just feel like that's adding more to your plate. They're going to use that against you. They're going to say, oh, wait, you couldn't go to work, but you could go be out in a theme park for hours. Like, one way or another, they're going to use that against you. If you don't need to use it, just don't.
Yeah, I mean, there are cases where they'll literally, they'll follow you. There's other places or other times where maybe they didn't follow you on your vacation, but they certainly combed your social media, and, you're supposed to be on limited light duty at work, and you took time off to go, run around Disneyland or wherever else you went to, and they see all the photos of you happy with your family, and that really pissed them off. So they're going to try and say, oh, well, you're fine enough to walk around Disneyland all day, but you couldn't do your job,
Right.
That comes up a lot, actually.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily just the person's social media, meaning the injured worker. It could be the wives, the kids, the sisters. They'll find it if it's out there. So just be careful and mindful of that. We actually do have an episode of the dangers of social media while on workers' comp. We're going to link it down below so you can check that one out on things that you should not be doing with social media while you're on workers' comp. But this is a very hot topic. People feel as if vacation time should be used for vacation and not because I was injured. There's a very sad feeling to the fact that I had to take all of my sick days, I had to take all of my vacations to make up for this injury that I had at work, and I feel some way, shape, or form robbed of my privilege to my time, and I was utilizing it for something I didn't want to utilize it for. And I think that's the hardship that comes with this topic, is people don't think of, vacation time, personal time off to recover for an injury.
No, it's a bummer that they have to use it. And this is a conversation we have a lot when it comes time to settle a case, because a lot of times there are situations where someone isn't able to recoup the vacation time. So when you go to Workers' Comp Appeals Board, the judge has very limited resources and power. They can't order certain things that are beyond the scope of what they are allowed to order. It's just the way the law is set up. And so a judge doesn't have the authority in workers' comp cases to order that vacation time spent while you're recovering from injury is reinstated. If there's a discrimination case, yes, but just in the course of a normal case where there's temporary disability it's owed and they burn through vacation time, no matter what we do, a judge has zero power to reinstate that.
Yeah.
And so even though the judge may be able to award temporary disability during that time, you're right, you're not going to get that vacation time back, like per se. So you're not going to get the time off of work to go use to spend with your family or elsewhere. It's just you use that to recover, which was not an anticipated use, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's the reality, but nonetheless, if you have that handbook, if you're not at the point where you feel like you need to take the vacation, I would definitely ask my employer if you lost the book for another copy, documents, and even if you're not injured, know the clause that come with your personal time off, your vacation time. It always helps. And if you're in a good company, then you're good. You're set. They take care of you and they understand that shit happens. So
yeah. And look, I think a lot of companies won't terminate you just because you're not on PTO. I'd say the large majority don't, because there's a scare that if they terminate you and they treated you differently than someone else, there's no policy, then you can turn around and sue them for disability discrimination. So I think more often than not, even without PTO being used, most employers won't terminate you. And something to watch for if you are thinking about not using vacation time and there's a policy against it, or if there isn't a policy against it, pay attention to what has happened to other coworkers and how they were treated, and make sure that you're being treated the same way, provided they were treated rightfully, that they were, they weren't discriminated against, because the policy that the employer has to be administrated equally against everyone.
Great. Well, I think that's it for today. Thank you guys for joining us in another podcast episode. We'll catch you guys on the next one.